Sophie Hardy and the Changeling Hybrid by M.R. Dale. Narrated by Leona Hall. Chapter 29. Not My Son. Desmeralda went to hug Kingsley again. Their bodies just passed straight through one another. Desmeralda shot a stare that looked straight into the soul of Sophie. If looks could kill, then Sophie would have been murdered 1,000 times. As Sophie looked back at Desmeralda, it took a few split seconds for her to realise exactly what had happened. "Kingsley is only in a soft light avatar?" she asked Clara, or Yasmin, or anyone that was listening. Yasmin reappeared in the group as there was nothing she could do at scope. Desmeralda's skin started to fall off, her eyes turned blood red, her nose grew an extra inch, and her feet left the ground. As her skin finished falling off and her feet finished raising, Sophie could now see she was staring at the changeling form of Desmeralda from a few minutes ago, and this one was truly, truly angry. It didn't speak, it just glided closer towards the three girls, and Sophie in the middle of the three was the main focus of its fury. Out of its pocket, it took a small white ball that Sophie recognised as the modified implant from earlier and played about with it in its hand. "I trusted you, and you tried to trick me. That is not my son," the changeling said, with such an unbelievable menace that made Sophie want to burst into tears. Before any of them could come up with a response, the changeling turned and headed back to the group of its kind. Every single one of them formed another circle with Desmeralda at the centre. Placing the implant on the side of her head, Desmeralda knelt in the centre, and the other changelings walked forwards towards her. Within seconds, the changelings had engulfed her, and nothing could be made out because of the huge mountain of bodies that encircled Kingsley's fury-riddled mum. "What are they doing?" Sophie asked, completely unsure of what to do now, and still quivering from the shock of what had just faced her. Nothing came from Miss Sissons, nor did an answer come from any of her three friends. Sophie decided instantly to zone back into scope, to talk directly to the teacher she had previously held in such high regard, but now had seemingly abandoned them all. Arriving in the control room, Sophie looked around. There was nobody there. Sophie was livid. Where would she go that was more important than this? She looked at the map that had all the dots on and pressed a few buttons so that it showed just the humans all over the world. Millions of them were disappearing. Sophie looked at one of the numbers, human population, 6 billion, and falling. "Get back to scope, now." Sophie typed in a message to Clara and Kingsley. Instantaneously, they both appeared. It didn't take long for Clara to study the map and notice what was happening. "Where are they all disappearing from?" Clara asked, panicking. "Mostly poorer countries," Sophie answered, knowing her geography the way she did. "But some here?" asked Jasmine, filled with worry. "Yes, they're spiriting away about 1 billion people," Sophie said, extremely quickly. She was trying desperately to find something that could stop them, but she had no clue. She was only 10 and massively out of her depth. "Anything to do with what she did to help earlier?" asked Clara. "No, nothing had changed in the population, but she definitely did something. Now, though, she's got angry, and the numbers are dropping," Yasmin replied, panicking. "Is she killing them?" Kingsley asked. "No, just wiping them from existence, sending them to the underworld," Sophie replied, sounding like she was being sarcastic to him, but not meaning to. She was just incredibly frightened. "Where's Miss Sissons?" Yasmin asked, now in a blind panic. The other three just stayed quiet, as they had no clue where their supposed mentor had gone in their hour of need. Clara had stayed quiet and had studied patterns in who was disappearing until now. "It's everyone without an implant," she surmised quite quickly. "How?" screeched Jasmine's voice as the enormity of the situation hit her. Everyone who hadn't been given an implant was now being wiped from the planet and sent to the underworld because of what the changelings were doing. "She said she was going to look after the children," Kingsley stated. Weirdly, he was the calmest of the group now. "There are billions of people all over the world that don't have an implant. Whole countries of poorer people, older people in this country," Yasmin waffled uncontrollably. "And Sophie began, not listening to Yasmin. "And both Clara interrupted. "They might not be gone yet," Kingsley shouted. "We might still be able to save some," Sophie yelled back. Almost on cue, the four of them zoned back to the field they had previously left. Sophie ran for the pile of changelings and started throwing them to the side to get to Desmeralda. Clara helped, and so did Yasmin. After much pulling, the three of them reached the centre. The changelings, being in the zombie-like state, helped immensely, and Sophie immediately pulled the implant off the side of Desmeralda's head. Desmeralda just looked up at her, still in her changeling form, and grinned. Without saying a word, she floated upwards and backwards before disappearing through the portal. All the other changelings came around from their trance-like state and leapt after her. The 4 children just stood there, again, helpless. Within seconds, the field was empty. The portal fizzled out to nothing, and the sky had returned to the blue it should be on an October evening. None of them knew quite what to say, and just stood there in a completely stunned silence until Sophie asked, "What do we do?" "I've no idea," Clara replied, completely agog at the thought of what had just happened. Sophie had a sinking feeling in her gut that made her want to throw up, even as her avatar. She knew that either her mum or her dad would have had no implant, but which one? Or they could have been saved in time. Clara hoped against hope that her dads had decided to turn theirs back on in time to answer the call from Mrs. Tabard. Yasmin and Kingsley had no such personal concerns, but felt unbelievably empathetic towards their friends. The Sophie Hardy saga was written and produced by M.R. Dale and narrated and produced by Leona Hall. If you enjoyed it and would like to continue to follow the adventures of Sophie and her friends in coming episodes, then please subscribe through one of the many podcast providers out there. The links for each of these can be found on our website. If you require more information, visit our many social media channels, or if you would like to purchase a copy of the book, then be sure to check out our website, www.sophiehardysaga.com. Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy.